People always say that family is everything, that no matter what happens in life, your children will always stand by you. But let me tell you something. Sometimes the people you love the most can break your heart in ways you never thought possible. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here I am. It's about my daughter, my only child. She didn't just leave me out of the most important day of her life. She came back months later, asking for something I could never give. And what I did in response? Well, let's just say some folks might call it harsh, but me? I call it survival. My name is Evelyn. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived in this little coastal town for more than 3 decades. If you've ever been to the East Coast, you know the kind of place. Old wooden houses, salty air, waves that crash hard enough to remind you that nature doesn't bow to anyone. I raised my daughter Lila here after her father passed away. God rest his soul. It was just the two of us. She was only 10 when he died, and I swear I gave that child everything I had left in me. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to make ends meet. Nights when other moms were tucking their kids into bed, I was still in my waitress uniform, counting out tips to see if we could afford groceries for the week. But I did it for her, always for her. That's why what happened years later felt like a slap in the face. It started about a year ago. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, scrolling through Facebook on my old laptop. And there it was, a picture of Lila with some young man I'd never even met. She was grinning ear to ear, showing off a diamond ring. The caption said, "Forever starts now." That's how I found out my daughter was engaged. Not a phone call, not even a text, a Facebook post. I remember my hand shaking so bad I almost spilled my coffee. I kept staring at the photo thinking maybe it was just for show. Maybe she'd call me later with the real news. But she didn't. Days went by. Weeks. Nothing. It was in one of those fancy cream-colored envelopes, the kind you see in wedding magazines. For a split second, my heart soared. Finally, the invitation had arrived. I sat down on the couch, tore it open, and pulled out the card inside. But it wasn't an invitation. It was a notice. "Mom, we've decided to keep the wedding small and stress-free. We won't be extending invitations to family. Please understand this is final." Signed, Lila and Daniel. I swear, I stopped breathing for a moment. No family? None? That couldn't be true. But later, through friends and neighbors, I learned the truth. They had invited Daniel's family. They had invited her childhood friends. The only person they had cut out was me. Her mother. The pain of that realization is something I still don't have words for. I tried calling her, texting her, nothing. She ignored me completely. When the day of the wedding came, I didn't even know where it was happening. So I sat on my porch that day, staring out at the ocean. I pictured her in a white dress, walking down the aisle. I wondered if she thought of me at all. I wondered if she noticed the empty seat where I should have been. And I cried. For hours. But here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't kill you. It just makes you harder. And little did I know, the real test was still coming. It was a quiet afternoon. I was watering the hydrangeas out front when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, my knees almost gave out. It was Lila. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year. She looked different, maybe more polished, but nervous. Her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. "Hi, Mom," she said, like nothing had happened. Behind her stood Daniel, holding a folder under his arm. And right then, I knew this wasn't about reconciliation. This was business. After some awkward small talk, Lila finally got to the point. "Mom," she said, "we're in a tough spot right now. We're starting a family and, well, we need a place to live. Your house would be perfect." I blinked, not sure I'd heard her right. Daniel jumped in smoothly, like he'd rehearsed the speech.
What Lila means is you don't really need a place this big anymore. It's just you, and this beach house would be ideal for us. We thought maybe you could sign it over." My heart sank. They weren't here to make amends. They were here to take. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You didn't invite me to your wedding, you cut me out of your life, and now you're asking me to hand over the home I built with my own hands?" Lila's eyes flashed. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've lived your life. It's our turn now." Those words hit me like a freight train. For years, I had bent over backward for that girl. I sacrificed my youth, my health, my happiness just to raise her right. And now she stood before me, dismissing my life as if it were disposable. I felt something shift inside me that day, a kind of steel spine I didn't know I had. "No," I said firmly, "this is my home. Every wall, every floorboard carries memories of raising you. I will not hand it over. Not now, not ever." Daniel scoffed. "Selfish old people always cling to things they don't need." I stared straight at him. "You're standing in the house I bought with sweat and tears. Don't you dare call me selfish." They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. And I just stood there, shaking, but also relieved, because for the first time in years, I had chosen myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the conversation over and over. Part of me felt guilty. She was my daughter after all. But another part of me knew this had been building for a long time. The truth is, I had raised her to be strong, but somehow along the way, she had grown entitled. Maybe it was my fault for giving too much. Maybe it was hers for never learning gratitude. Either way, I knew one thing. If I gave in now, she would keep taking until there was nothing left of me. So I made a decision. A few days later, I went to my lawyer. We updated my will. I left the house, not to Lila, not to Daniel, but to a foundation that provides housing for single mothers who actually need it. Women like me, back when I was struggling, who would give anything for a safe home for their kids. I figured, if my daughter couldn't appreciate the roof over her head, maybe someone else could. And if Lila ever wonders why she was cut out, she can remember the day she stood on my porch and demanded what wasn't hers. Do I still love my daughter? Yes, that will never change. But love doesn't mean surrendering your dignity. Love doesn't mean letting yourself be used. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up, even to your own flesh and blood, and say, enough. I don't know if she'll ever come back. I don't know if we'll ever reconcile. But I do know this. I will live the rest of my life in peace, surrounded not by takers, but by memories of the times I gave everything I had and chose at last to give to myself. And maybe, just maybe, one day she'll realize what she lost.